If you are a parent in the whirlwind of raising neurodivergent children while managing your own ADHD, you, my friend, are in the right place. Today, I am thrilled to introduce a powerhouse in the world of ADHD, parenting, and mindfulness, Liezl Laidlaw. Liezl is a registered online therapist specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness techniques with a particular focus on supporting individuals in ADHD. As a mother of neurodivergent children and someone with lived experience of ADHD, she brings a unique, empathetic perspective to her practice. Her approach is both compassionate and practical, offering tailored strategies to help clients manage emotional outbursts, impulsivity, and the daily challenges that come along with ADHD. Beyond her therapeutic work, Liezl is a mindfulness coach extraordinaire dedicated to making mindfulness accessible and effective for ADHDers. She has also developed specialized mindfulness courses specifically designed for individuals with ADHD, creating a safe and supportive environment for personal growth. Liezl's passion for transforming life's challenges into opportunities for growth is evident in her work as she empowers others to discover their strengths and thrive. So grab your favorite cup of sanity, settle in, and get ready to be inspired by Liezl's journey and insights. Liezl, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you for having me. I'm loving being here.
Thank you so much. So I like to start with an icebreaker
hmm
and off the wall just to get to know each other.
Is this
So
the
if you
part
could,
where I can run away if I want?
please don't.
All right, then. I'll sit.
So if you could rename ADHD, what would you rename it and why?
Mm. Uh, Gosh. Ooh. I would want it to be one word as well. I wouldn't want it to be a whole big long thing like ADHD is right now. Uh, all at onceness.
Agreed. In our house, we call it the Fast Brain Club.
Oh, fab. I like that. Yeah. No, all the little nicknames I know of for it. There's also sorts of reasons why people can find them offensive and take offense of them. So I try my best to steer clear in case I upset someone. But all at onceness or fast brain club sounds perfect.
Absolutely. So I read from your bio that you had maybe an unconventional path to
Hmm.
diagnosis. Would you mind to share?
Not at all. So I lived most of my life unaware of the fact that I'm an ADHD, and this is a very common story for parents of neurodivergent children. And it wasn't until my child was diagnosed with autism that I was like, well, where did they get that from? Um, because I'm not autistic. My husband's not autistic. There's no neurodivergence in our family until it became very clear that, oh, actually, if I think about a sibling's children, oh, yeah, actually, there is one diagnosis and possibly there's, some others that may be there. And then it became very clear that actually there's a genetic link here.
Yeah.
And after going to some talks about autism, because I wanted to, typical ADHD, wanted to learn all there was to learn about it,
Absolutely.
um, the speaker said something. It was the sort of acceptance of what it is to be different, not less than, that absolutely set me into floods of tears. And I quite couldn't get it. I was like, well, what the heck? What are you on about? This is not about you. Come on, that's a bit selfish. And it wasn't until I went to go and speak to them about it and went, that got me somehow. I don't know why. And they said, uh-huh, okay, your child's had a diagnosis, right? Um,
Yes.
you have a little think about that. And, I did. And the more I looked into it, the more it became very clear to me that I was an ADHD. But if I hadn't, start back, see, there's not a linear story ever, is there? If I hadn't learned to be a therapist before I got to my child's diagnosis, I probably would have taken longer to get to that realization. And I would never have become a therapist if 7 years ago I hadn't started learning about mindfulness.
Ah.
if I hadn't learned about mindfulness because I was in a job that was doing me in. I was leaving at 5:30 in the morning and coming home after like 7 o'clock at night with a very small person in the house. If I wasn't learning about mindfulness, I would not have made decisions about what's better for me and my family,
Yeah,
as I did. And that's what changed my direction from change management in financial services to being a therapist online working with ADHDers.
that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
That's it. I'm done.
So, my son was diagnosed,
Mhm,
and I knew that his dad had ADHD,
mhm.
but I was unaware that I had inattentive ADHD. I thought it was the impulsive hyperactive.
Yeah,
Um,
the way
and
it shows
since
up in
then,
boys and men, right?
yes. And since then, since my son's diagnosis,
Mhm.
my mom and dad have also been diagnosed with
Oh man, that boy got it in spades.
ADHD. He did not stand a chance here.
No way he was going to miss that.
So we are all learning about ourselves, which
Yeah,
is amazing.
yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic that children are recognized. I mean, for a 7-year-old girl to be recognized as autistic is
Mm.
fabulous because masking is a really big deal, um,
Yes, it is.
especially for girls. So we're very fortunate that that became clear. We're not very fortunate in how it did it, and I don't really want to go into the stuff about that because it's kind of personal. But um, I wouldn't wish that on anyone else, is what I'd like
Yeah,
to say. I would much rather somebody was able to recognize that for themselves. And this is what we're doing here. We're making sure that people are able to spot things that matter about themselves and about their children so that they can make life a bit easier.
absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm.
So now I have a question. Have you ever had a moment where your ADHD parent brain and therapist brain collide?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a classic oops or an aha moment.
Well, one of the reasons I decided to become a therapist was because I was finding that my parenting was falling short of what I had hoped for.
Mm.
I had lofty ideas of the kind of parent I was going to be until I was actually a parent. And then
Same.
the template I had for how to be a parent, well, fell short
Yeah.
a lot. And I was like, oh, what do I do about that now? So as I was learning to be a therapist, I was learning all about attachment theory. I was learning about being a good enough parent. I was learning about um, attachment styles, all that kind of stuff. Um, and so there was all this growing going on at the same time as learning. And I can tell you, growth feels awful.
Yes, it does.
It's not the fun it looks like it might be. When you're feeling really grubby as you're changing, you know you're doing the work. My
Yeah.
therapist brain and my parent brain have on many occasions clashed where my parent brain goes, of course, this is how you parent. And my therapist brain goes, uh-uh. And I
Agreed.
have to catch myself and I have to remind myself that the person in front of me is, in fact, not my enemy, but
Yeah.
someone who has some needs that are not being met. And that's my job.
Yes.
So, yeah, totally. Clashes all the time.
Agreed. My path into ADHD parent coaching
Yeah.
was a 6 year long journey of me trying to become a better parent.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, I should share this with people. It's so valuable. So I get the path of wanting to be better and ending up where you are.
Yeah. It makes such a difference once you've got the understanding of what it is both parties need
Yeah.
before you can actually wade in there and make change, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Next up, I want to know what's one piece of advice. Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today. give to your clients about ADHD that you find yourself needing to remember often?
Oh, that I need to remember often. Oh, hello. So for my therapy clients, I would say that internalized ableism
Mm.
hides in plain sight. So when we don't recognize that we're doing this compare and despair thinking, where we're comparing ourselves to other people and then falling short and going, and that's because I'm rubbish. That's very much from ableism. That's because different is not okay. That is because different is less than, um, not as good as.
Yeah,
And if we don't catch ourselves having that nonsense thought, we can believe it as fact and act accordingly. And that
agreed.
mucks up our next steps, how we feel about ourselves, how we interact with the world. So being aware of our own thoughts is essential for being able to make change in how we behave and how we feel about things. But I am a human being, and I have been a human being much longer than I've been aware that I was an ADHDer. So that pattern trips me up every now and then.
Yes. For me, it is I need to remember my tone.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I'm constantly telling parents, the way we speak and the way we respond matters. And then I find myself in a tizzy myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Your internal voices will become external voices if you're not aware of what you're up to.
Agreed.
Mm.
Liezl, hyperfocus can be a blessing and a curse. I want to know what's the most unusual or funny thing you found yourself completely obsessed with lately.
Mm. I don't know if I'm really lucky that my hyperfocus is my work. My family might not agree with me, um, because having found a direction that gels so well with what my strengths are, that allows me to look after my needs as well as it does, and keeps me occupied because people are infinitely interesting, um,
Yes.
means that I lean into work when I shouldn't be leaning into work. I lean into work when really a break would be useful. I lean
Yeah.
into work when, well, what you lot are doing is really uncomfortable and shouty, so I'm going to do this thing that I love. Um, I need to remind myself that healthy means balanced. Um, and I also need to make time for hyperfocus to let go. Um,
Yeah.
so it's finding that balance. Work for as a mindfulness tutor and work as a therapist engulfs me, and I love it. But I need to make sure that it doesn't do it all the time.
Yeah. I can see that.
Mm.
Speaking of work, you have an 8-week mindfulness course launching in February.
Yeah.
What inspired you to create it?
Well, mindfulness is not new, right? Let me just open with that. We're talking a few thousand years worth of wisdom here. It comes from Eastern philosophies, mostly Buddhism, but mindfulness itself is a secular thing. It's what we've learned from Buddhism that we can use in secular life without it affecting any religion or beliefs that we have. So, whatever your beliefs or religion is, you can do mindfulness alongside it, and it actually enhances it quite nicely.
Yeah.
Um, so, what inspired me to do this? Well, when I learned mindfulness, I didn't know I was an ADHDer. And so the
Yeah.
shame that I experienced as I recognized that I could not sit still as much as all the other participants could,
Mm,
the discouragement I felt when I opened up about this and said, I cannot make myself sit 45 minutes a day. I just can't. And
yeah.
tutors said stuff like, well, if you're not committing to it, then, you won't get what you're looking for. And I felt awful because really the best outcomes I had had of anything was being able to allow myself to sit and notice what's going on. But I
Yeah.
couldn't do it as long as other people. And I had more thoughts going on than other people did. And so my distraction was quicker and faster and stronger.
Yeah.
Um, and when I realized I was an ADHD, I was like, oh, if I'd known that, I would have been able to stand up for myself and go, different is not wrong.
Yes.
Sitting
Yes.
is winning. Practicing while walking or making toast is winning. You don't
Yes.
have to be sitting there for 4 hours, bolt upright in saffron robes for this to matter.
Agreed.
And that is what inspired me because it helped me so much to learn about myself even before I knew I was neurodivergent, to be able to put in some strategies that were really helpful to me without even knowing I was an ADHDer, but that were really helpful to me as an ADHDer. I wanted other ADHDers to be able to teach themselves ways of interacting with their inner world that was going to give them ways of responding to the world differently from what they have been.
That is so magical to hear. The most profound thing happened when my son was around 5.
Mm.
I found mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhism,
Ah,
actually, a practicing Buddhist.
okay.
And my son recognized the difference. He recognized the difference in old mom and new mom.
Yes.
And now he is hyper aware that his mom is different than most moms,
Ah,
which is a blessing and a curse, but more so a blessing to know. He calls me the calm mom, and me from
hmm
9 years ago
hmm
would have laughed at that. So
yeah.
I find your work to be refreshing and so, so needed.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. My past self was known as Shouty Mum.
Yeah.
Um, Shouty Mum
Same.
did herself in with shouting, did everyone else
Same.
in with shouting, and it didn't achieve much apart from
Yeah,
making me feel terrible.
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that mindfulness has given me is grace for the
Mm.
moments when I do revert back to shouty mom. I no longer dwell in that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And go, hiya, I see you suffering, Hen. It's okay.
Yeah.
But you don't have to carry on like that. Let me help
Agreed.
you here.
So you've kind of already answered my next question, but if you want to elaborate, I would
Yeah.
love to hear it. A lot of people, my friends included, my parent friends, believe
Mm.
that mindfulness and ADHD are like oil and water.
Oh, yeah. Incompatible.
Yes. What do you say to someone who feels that way,
Yeah.
that their brain is too busy or too slow
Yeah.
for mindfulness?
I'm not going to tell anyone they're wrong, ever. What I am going to say is that mindfulness is not one size fits all. We don't all have to go on a 4-year retreat. We don't all have to shave our heads. Um, we can adapt this to our own needs. Mindfulness, in its essence, is just a way of being able to check in with your inner world without judging it
Yes.
in the moment. And whether you do that while you're sitting down to put your shoes on, or whether you do that when you're doing a major, insightful 1 hour meditation, is yours. You get to choose whether you do it while you're moving because sitting down is not a thing, um, is absolutely your choice. We need to give ourselves permission to check in with ourselves in whatever way works. If we do not give ourselves permission, then no, mindfulness will not work.
Yeah. Agreed. What is the simple mindfulness practice that you recommend for ADHD parents who feel like we're juggling too much?
Oh, ugh. Okay. I'm making funny faces because you won't be able to see me because this is audio, but I'm really stretching myself here. Um, it's unfortunately going to sound very standard mindfulnessy because if you don't have enough time to sit for 20 minutes, you should really sit for 40 is the standard advice, right? But any kind of time you give yourself to check in is worth it. If all the time you can find is the 30 seconds before you fall asleep at night, that's when you're checking in with yourself. It's worth it because you get to learn, you get little data points every time you check in with yourself. It's easier to recognize that actually I'm not shouty mum every day of my life. Nah, I'm shouty mum on the days when I haven't enough sleep. I'm shouty mum when actually I've got more to deal with than I can actually manage. I'm shouty mum when there's something dealing with um sensory difficulties, for example, or if I'm feeling rejected in some way, then I'm much more likely to be searching mum. But I won't know that if I don't check in with myself every now and then, going, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? What are my physical sensations right now? Those three things are so essential for us to be able to learn about ourselves and make new decisions, make new plans. Um, they're absolutely at the bedrock of being able to recognize yourself and love yourself. We are so quick to kick ourselves in the butt.
Yes.
This is the thing that takes work. Loving ourselves takes work because our brains are actually evolved for survival, not for happiness. So unless we actually do the work for the happiness, we're not going to be happy and we're not going to recognize it when it's right in front of us.
Yes. I agree with all of that so much.
I love this being right, Lark. Argue with me a bit. I feel I need it.
So the next question is rather selfish.
Mm.
Do you have a favorite mindfulness technique for kids with ADHD, and how do
Hmm.
you make it fun and engaging for them?
So I'm only qualified to work with adults, but the things I
Gotcha.
use from my adults is entirely useful for children too.
Gotcha.
Um, there is, for example, a thing called anemone breath, where, and I'll have to describe this because we're not on video, but if you hold your hand up like a chef's kiss, fingers all together, and when you take an in breath, you open your fingers as you're breathing in. So fingers open, and when you then breathe out, you put the fingers back together again, fingers together at the end of the out breath. That is a way to keep you aligned with your body, gives you something to look at as you're breathing in and out, keeps your body involved, keeps your mind occupied, means you're much more likely to be able to stick with the breathing than you would be if you were sitting cross-legged and just going, now sit still and breathe.
That is so helpful for me. I have tried to teach my son deep breathing by
Hmm.
raising the belly, filling the balloon and then
Hmm.
deflating. But
Hmm.
we're reverse. He is chest breathing, so
Yeah.
his balloon deflates on breathing in. So I am going to use that this evening and see if we can get some deep breathing going.
Yeah. Do you know that's a hard thing to teach somebody, is diaphragmatic breathing, because unless they understand the mechanics of it, it's going to be really hard. And if they've learned to be chest breathing, because actually nobody is naturally a chest breather, we learn to do that.
Yeah.
If they've learned to do that, what we need to do is to learn how to use the diaphragm again to do breathing. And in order to do that, when I deal with young people in particular, I would say when you're breathing, breathe in and out of your belly button.
Mm.
That way, when you're breathing in, you're expecting the belly button to come out as the tummy inflates. And when you're breathing out, you're expecting the belly button to go in as the tummy deflates. And that just puts the focus on a bit of the body a bit more. And it makes it easier for them to focus on that part because the diaphragm is literally just above your belly button anyway.
Yeah. That is so helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no bother at
Snuck
all.
one very selfish one in there.
Oh, no bother. I'm here for this all day.
So, I want to get into your mindfulness course because it
Yeah.
is coming up, and I want to
Mhm.
give people the opportunity to learn about it before it
Yeah.
gets here. So, I want to know what is unique about this course and
Hmm.
what makes it especially helpful for ADHDers or ADHD parents.
Okay. So all the participants are ADHDers of some flavor, right? So there'll be
Mhm.
ADDers, there'll be ADHDers, there'll be ODHDers, all the flavors of ADHD, right? Um, it is not for neurotypical people, which means you will find yourself in a room of people, well, virtual room of people who have shared experiences with you.
Yes.
You will be able to learn from other people's experiences without you having to make the same mistakes, and you will find acceptance with these people because in a group of people, when we start seeing each other as human beings, and it's easier when we're more similar, it is easier to learn because we don't learn when we're afraid. We don't learn when we're masking. It's much harder to take on new behaviors when we're trying to look like the best version of ourselves. I would encourage anyone who comes to my mindfulness course to bring their crochet, to bring their fidgets. If you've got a cat, if we don't see that cat's bottom on the screen at least once, then you haven't been. Obviously, want to try and avoid as much distraction as we can because we're trying to keep our attention on mindfulness, which is just learning, right? Once you're well into mindfulness, it's easy to do it thinking anywhere. You can do it in a the train platform without any kind of bother. But as we're
Yeah.
learning, we try and reduce the distraction a little bit. However, I know that for ADHDers, keeping your hands busy is not a distraction. It's actually a way of keeping your focus.
Yes.
Um, we don't make people sit. If you would like to learn how to sit in the classic mindful pose, go for it. I'll help you. If you think that lying down is absolutely the only way you're going to be able to settle down, go and do it. When you snore, I'll just wake you up at the end of the class. Unless you give me instructions to wake you any earlier. If moving around feels like the thing to do for you, go on, fill your boots. We need you to do that because you need to be engaged in this class. The classes are 2 hours long, right? There's a lot to cover. We have a load of breaks. But if you don't find a way of keeping yourself engaged, it's going to be boring eventually because you won't be able to catch what's going on and you won't be able to be part of the conversation because you've lost half of what was going on.
Yeah.
So those are just a few of the things. Everything in what we do in this course is adaptable to what you need. And we keep the numbers small so that we can have more one-to-one interaction in the course. We keep discussion between the participants and the tutor so that only if we do breakout rooms do people speak to each other, and we have ground rules in place to make sure that those interactions are safe so that we all understand what's allowed and how we keep each other's information secure only in the group, never share on behalf of someone else. That's kind of standard for mindfulness, but it's really important for us to recognize that when you share something as an ADHDer, there may be major shame involved. And if you finally pluck up the courage to say to somebody, do you know what? I've got doom piles all over the house. It's important that you get to say that without somebody going, really? You should just X, Y, Z. If we've set those rules in place at the very beginning to say, look, whatever somebody says to you, take that as a gift and look after it very carefully, but do not share it. It's not yours to share. It means people are allowed to come as themselves. And that is what's different from normal mindfulness courses because there's such a variety of people there that it might not necessarily feel like that safety in those courses. I'm not saying a standard neurotypical mindfulness course is rubbish. By no means that's how I got into it, but
Right.
it's so much easier when you know you're safe.
Man, I can't imagine that there's anything else to add, but from what you just said, because it sounds amazing. But my next question was actually for anyone hesitant about signing up.
Mm,
What's the one thing you would want them to know about how mindfulness can make a difference in their lives?
okay, I'm going to try not to tear up because it's that important.
Mm-hmm.
If you can imagine somebody who totally thought they had their life in control, suddenly going from working as a contractor in change management, financial services, finding themselves in a place where they've got a completely different career, they're working from home, and they're available to their family when they need them. If that's not a big enough change for you to recognize how life-changing this can be, how much this can benefit you, I don't know what is, but that's my experience. What really matters here is your experience. What could you gain from having a go at this? You're not going to lose anything. I mean, it's course fee, but honestly, you're going to be spending that on beer and crisps anyway. So even if you've had a go at mindfulness in the past, I've had participants who had been on mindfulness courses in the past, who had a practice even, who came to a mindfulness course with me and have said, look, I am so glad I tried this again because I kept kicking myself for not being able to do it. I kept kicking myself for not being good enough. And actually, I never realized that all I was doing was just sticking to a mold that wasn't me. I'm allowed to do it my way.
Yes. Ugh, that is so good. That's so wonderful.
I'm glad you like it.
So, is there anything else you want to say before I lead people to the program because I'm sure everyone is wanting to sign up?
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Um, Numbers are limited. We're doing it on Thursday evenings from 7 p.m. GMT UK time for 2 hours, so 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock GMT. And we're doing that for 8 weeks. So if you're going to commit to this, please make sure that you commit to the full 8 weeks because the numbers are so limited that I wouldn't like someone to miss out to someone else who maybe is only going to come 2 or 3 times. Um, Obviously, it's very helpful for me to have the course fees, but actually, that's not why I do this. If I was going to make my millions, this is not where I would start. the the commitment that we need from people is to each other as well as to themselves. So if you're gonna do it, please make sure you can. Don't just, I know, if it sounds fantastic, you're gonna go, yeah, I'm buying this now, and then find out actually you can't do it or you don't really have the time or whatever. Make sure
Yeah,
that you make that commitment to yourself before you book. It's really important that you do.
wonderful. So everyone is waiting. How can people learn about your course and grab their spot before it fills up?
Okay, so I have sent you, if I haven't, I'm going to, a whole pile of links that includes the Eventbrite booking link. If, for example, somebody says, oh, do you know, I really can't do it this February, but maybe I'd like to do it later on, we have a newsletter that goes out monthly that gives you dates for when we do it again. And the next course will be in September.
Perfect.
So you've got plenty of time to get yourself organized. And it's after your kids have gone back to school if your kids go to school.
Yes.
Um, so you've had that week of, oh, when they've all got on the bus again, um, to just get back into being yourself again. And we finish in November, that one, so that we make sure it's all out the way of getting prepared for Santa time. Um, so whether you come in February or whether you come in September, it's up to you. Make sure you've got the time if you're going to do it. You can sign up to the newsletter, which the link will be in the chat box that I'm hoping you put in.
Absolutely.
Um, and if there's any questions you want to ask me about it, I'll give you my email address just now. So that is connect, as in CONNECT, at rewire, REWIRE, therapy, THR, oh my word, APY, therapy.co.uk. So connect at Rewire Therapy. And if you email me on there, I could respond to you directly. I cannot, unfortunately, offer therapy to anyone in the US because our qualifications don't match with what the requirements are in the US. But I do work with clients all over the world, apart from in the US. So if you're anywhere else, then obviously we can have a chat about that if that's going to be more appropriate for you than mindfulness might be.
Perfect. And for everyone listening, we will put in the show notes the link for the newsletter and, of course, the link for the February sign up.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for allowing me to share that information with people. I can't wait.
I know I'm so excited for you. So, before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for ADHD parents or individuals who might be struggling right now?
Right now. Okay. ADHD makes your life harder than someone who has a neurotypical life. Let's not make mistakes and believe that some people have no troubles.
Mm,
Everyone suffers. And as a Buddhist, you'll know that suffering is part of life, right? We don't get to sidestep this.
agreed.
But when you get to learn some ways to alleviate some of that suffering, you can make your life a little bit easier. Look out for those opportunities. It's important to feel when it's feeling rubbish. It's important to feel when it's feeling terrible and oppressive. But it's also important to lift your eyes up to look for the opportunities to make it better and find that for yourself. They're out there. You can make your life better.
Mm. Liezl, this was so good. I've learned so much, and I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to share
I love it. Anytime I get to speak to another ADHDer, my energy goes up like 12-fold. This is
it.
the end of my first Monday in January, and I'm hyper now.
I'm glad to help. Thank you for sharing your stories, your insights, being vulnerable. I'm sure our audience is buzzing with ideas and inspiration right now. So I hope to see
Fantastic.
you with a full roster in February, and the course
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything, anytime I can come back and talk some more about mindfulness or ADHD or anything your clients, your group members would like to hear about, I'd be very happy to come back if you'll have me.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you very much. I've loved the chat.
Thank
Thanks, Daniel.
you.